Mirror, mirror on the wall, which SUV is the shittiest of them all? Hello chums! Gran Turismo in 2025 seems to be chasing a trend that most car enthusiasts wish didn't exist in the first place, the crossover SUV. This year so far has seen 6 content updates, and 5 of them have added an SUV of some description. So we now have 5 crossover SUVs in Gran Turismo 7. Ignore that one. And that one. Okay, there's 7, but there's a bit of a distinction here. There is the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, which is a full EV performance SUV with over 600 horsepower and all-wheel drive, meaning it has the potential to go head-to-head with some of the fastest supercars in the game, or it would if the brakes worked. Then there's the Lamborghini Uterus, which is an Audi A4 on stilts with a million turbos glued on. It makes roughly the same power as the Hyundai and has working brakes, so we have 2 very performance-oriented SUVs. However, in the same update that brought us the Ioniq 5N, we also saw the start of a new trend, and that is the plastic appliance. Now, before some of you rush to the comment section to tell me that Gran Turismo is supposed to have everyday cars, and that if you don't like the game having crossovers then you're not a true Gran Turismo fan, I would urge you to comment anyway because it's still channel engagement. I would also urge you to remove your head from your own backside because I actually agree with the first half of that sentiment. Gran Turismo should have normal cars. The second half is bollocks, obviously. You can be a true fan and not like something that's been added. That kind of gatekeeping can go away. Yes, Gran Turismo has always been the game where you take a humble box on wheels and throw 300 grand into it so that it can outrun a Dodge Viper. However, if you throw 300 grand into the Toyota CHR that was added alongside the Ioniq 5N, it won't outrun a 28-year-old Honda Civic. Perks of a hybrid CVT, apparently. Before realising I could only add about 30 horsepower to the CHR, I was actually looking forward to it. After all, who wouldn't find it hilarious to see this stupid little thing pushing 350 horsepower and rivaling a Lamborghini Huracan around a track? To salt the wound further, the CHR possesses some of the most batshit visual customization on any car in the game. So we have something that looks like a hill climb monster, yet it can't climb hills. I was so incensed by this car that I made a video bitching about it at the time. 2 months later, the Mazda CX-30 was added to a collective sigh of disappointment. Yet, ironically, the Mazda showed us how fun these plastic appliances can be if implemented correctly. The visual customization wasn't quite as nutty as the Toyota, but the engine runs on good old-fashioned dead dinosaurs with a normal gearbox, meaning it could be upgraded to 440 horsepower. Coupled with the rear diffuser option, it's a genuine track weapon, and undoubtedly one of the faster non-engine swapped front-wheel drives in the game. It's the perfect example of how, when implemented correctly, these abhorrent machines do actually have a place in Gran Turismo. So, 50% success rate so far then. But it got oh so much worse. Update 1.59 was released at the end of May 2025, and we got some fantastic cars, from the Suzuki Carry with its batty customization to the C5 Corvette to finally complete the lineage. We also got a Honda CR-V. This was another car that had the potential to be rather formidable. After all, there were variants of this car that featured the K24 engine, albeit without a turbo, and all-wheel drive. An all-wheel drive SUV, tuned up to over 500 horsepower, could certainly take the fight to a Civic Type R, but that's not what we got. We got the hybrid petrol generator thingy that works in a way that's far too complicated for my feeble mind to comprehend. What that means for us simpletons playing the game is that the CR-V is effectively treated as a full electric vehicle, only allowing us to fit a racing ECU, which adds 7 horsepower. So it had even few power upgrades than the already insulting Toyota CHR, and despite that lunacy, the visual customization was even more wacky, with a literal Pikes Peak kit to give us the most offensive example of a sheep in wolf's clothing in history. This car was arguably even more offensive than the CHR, so of course I made another video where I moaned about it for 6 minutes. A month later, we received update 1.60, which was possibly the worst received update of the year. We got a rally car variant of a car we already had, a Citroen from the 1980s, which admittedly was kind of cool, and we got the worst selection of engine swaps yet, and a Peugeot 2008. Allure. While the styling is far from alluring, you can rest assured that the 2008 is an absolutely mediocre car. Oh, you thought I was going to say something good about it. So, the 2008 is the lightest plastic appliance so far, and it's the least powerful of the bunch with a 3-cylinder PureTech engine. However, like the Mazda, it's a bog-standard petrol engine with no electric components, which means we can fit upgrades! The downside is that the ceiling isn't exactly very high with this one, with a maximum of 245 horsepower. It does weigh less than a ton once upgraded to make up for it, so this dull as dishwater SUV will easily match a mid-tier supercar on lap time, and it will run rings around the CR-V. The visual customization leaves rather a lot to be desired, so outside of having a rally wing bolted on the back, it looks very tame next to the Honda and Toyota. Our fifth contender is the most recent addition in the form of the Nissan Cash Grab. Hang on, no, it's the Nissan Cash Cow. No, that's not right either. The Nissan Kumquat was added in the July update, and it's a doozy. Functionally, it's much the same as the Honda CR-V, using a petrol engine to act as a generator to charge a battery that drives the wheels. So in Gran Turismo, it, for all intents and purposes, behaves like an electric car, except it sometimes makes a sound like a lawnmower when it's charging. It gets one power upgrade, the same as the Honda, but it does gain slightly more power. It gains 11. It also has a very generic selection of visual customizations, just like the Peugeot. So the Nissan Bloodclot is effectively the worst of all worlds. So we have our 5 contenders, but only one can be crowned the shittiest. How about a time trial? We'll take the Mazda out first, since it will no doubt be the fastest. With over 400 horsepower and the extra downforce provided by a rear diffuser, the CX-30 isn't just fast for an SUV, it's fast full stop, and it gets around my chosen test track in 54.1 seconds. By comparison, I recently tested a 900 horsepower Chevrolet Chevelle, and it was only 2 seconds faster. Since the Peugeot is likely to be the next best, it goes next. It has a bit more than half the power of the Mazda, so it's definitely not going to be mounting much of a challenge, but it'll be interesting to see how much faster it is than the hybrids. It's a decent car to drive, because it's not very powerful, you don't have to brake much. It gets a 57.5. Next we have the Henry Hoover, also known as the Toyota CHR. The droning CVT is very difficult and weird to get used to, but the handling is decent, which makes it all the more depressing we're stuck with 175 horsepower. The least powerful car here once upgraded, it gets a 1 minute, 2 seconds, .750. Now we have arguably the most pointless use for an all-wheel drive system in the Honda CR-V. Like the Mazda, it also gets a rear diffuser option for high downforce values, which makes this car excellent in mid-speed corners, though it's never really going fast enough to take full advantage. It gets a 1 minute 1.839, almost a second ahead of the Toyota. Right, the Kumquat. It's lighter than the CR-V and more powerful, which you'd think would count for something. This car displays some very odd handling characteristics. You wouldn't think a car this slow would have such violent lift-off oversteer, but it does. It gets a 1 minute 1.824, which is near enough identical to the CR-V. The Toyota is the slowest by just under a second, despite actually having more power upgrades than the Honda and the Nissan, though they're all fairly closely matched. All 3 of the hybrids are over 4 seconds per lap slower than the Peugeot, and 7.5 seconds per lap slower than the Mazda, on what is a very short circuit. So, the CHR is the slowest, but is it the shittiest? I'm not so sure. One could argue that the Nissan and Honda are just as deserving of the prestigious award, and all 3 are equally bad. There's little doubt that the Mazda CX-30 is the best of the 5. While the visual customization could be improved, it's still not bad, but the performance, handling and sound stand as an example of how these crossovers should be added to the game. The Peugeot comes second despite having the worst visual customization of the bunch because it sounds good with its 3-cylinder engine, sounding like a baby V6, and it offers just enough performance to drag itself out of the gutter that's occupied by the hybrids. While I despise all 3 of the hybrids, it's hard to pick which one is the worst, but I honestly think it has to go to the most recent addition, the Nissan Cash Grab. Sure, it's the fastest of the 3 hybrids, but it's not like that difference is going to count for much, because it can still be outperformed by an upgraded Unimog for Christ's sake. I'd also argue that the Honda and Toyota handle better, or at least more predictably, plus they at least have interesting visual customization, even if it is completely wasted on them. The Nissan looks as disappointing as it drives. Bit shit, isn't it? So that's my pick for the worst SUV in the game. What's yours? Or do you like all of them? Or do you hate all of them equally? Join in with my shit posting in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do like, subscribe, and touch my bell so that you get notified of my future uploads. Take care of yourself, and ta-ra.